you, then so I just want to start off by getting all of you guys familiar a little bit with the structure of Flutter, because initially on a first look, it may look a bit weird. However, for those of you who may have some previous programming knowledge, especially by taking classes at Mount SAC, you may already know a little bit of C++ or Java. And so I think it'll be useful to use that previous knowledge and make that connection to Flutter. That way you can learn things a bit easier, and it doesn't look as such like an intimidating language on the first go. So now if we just familiarize ourselves with a C++ example in this case, where if we look at everything in the red box, we'll see that we have a function that's passing a person object. And all we're really going to do is just say that we're going to return this person object and specify a few parameters in here, which like we have a name, an age, and a social security number. And on this left side over here is what you may be familiar with, where we have everything just in one line, and it just specifies everything all in one go. However, this isn't actually the only way that we can structure everything. We can actually, taking a look at the right-hand side, indent this in a way that can maybe, depending on how much like parameters you do have, make it a bit more readable. Where we're gonna have still our same functions, just our same contents of a function called getPersonObject that's gonna pass a person object or return a person object, and so the only line that we have return and the object, which is of type person, and we have our starting parenthesis, and then we have line 1, which is the person name, line 2, which is the age of the person, and line 3, which is the social security number of the person. And these are all just parameters of this object. And so then we end the statement with our ending parenthesis and then a semicolon. And of course, it's just keep note that it's the same contents in the left side of the box as are on the right hand side of the box. The only difference is in the spacing. So it's important to keep that in mind when we do look at the Flutter structure. So actually, hold up. I just want to pause here a quick second just for that to sink in. And for those of you guys in the chat, just send any questions if you are a bit confused on stuff, because if not, we can go ahead and jump into the Flutter example, which we'll see on the next slide over here. So if we do take a look at this is what was seen on the left-hand side of our C++ example, where we just have this function. You can just think of it as a function called build, in which we're just returning a single object, in which everything in the blue box is just one parameter, everything in the red box is just our second parameter. And so for right now, you don't really need to be you don't really need to know the specifics of the syntax of this language, like what's scaffold, like what's this widget, what's @bar, because we'll have the other officers explain a little bit more on that later on in this presentation. But there is some key differences in the language. Like you'll see in the blue box, our first line, it's actually specifying the type for the parameter. So it has that @bar and then the 2 dots, which is the colon, and then we have the content of that. And in the red box, we have body, and then the 2 dots as that's our colon, and then the contents of that. But again, it's still similar to something that you may already be familiar with if you've programmed in another language before. And so with this, we'd actually be able to do the same thing as before. And this is actually the structure that is seen in most tutorials, and as well as the Code Labs tutorial that we'll be following along with today as well, in which we structure this in a way and indent it in a way so that each of these parameters is within their own line. So we can actually see this by going over to the next slide, and we can see that again, this is still all the same contents, but now it's just spaced out differently. So now we still have our same build function, and we're returning the scaffold object, but now our starting parenthesis is indicating this new line, and everything after that is indented. And then again, everything in that blue box is all the same content, and we can see that @bar colon, and then we have our @bar object that we're returning, and then we have below that is our parameter indicating the information for body, which is our second parameter. And again, this is just still all the same content, but just spaced out differently. And I know on the first look, it can be a bit weird. I know it was for me. So hopefully you guys can see some of those similarities, and you can relate your knowledge to C++ or Java into what we'll be seeing in Flutter. And so with that, I'll pause a little bit, have you guys ask a little bit questions if you want to see any of the previous slides before, to see those connections again. Then yeah, I guess it may be good, Jasmine, if you could just like kind of jump back one slide and then pause a little bit and then jump back just so you can see the transition again. So here again, just returning the object. Oh no, go one forward. Sorry. Yeah, this one right here. So just again, we're returning our object. We just have our blue box, which is just parameter 1, red box parameter 2, and then jumping over to the next slide, we have returning our object. Blue box is just parameter 1, red box is parameter 2. And so hopefully you'll be able to see that connection, and it'll be and it'll be a good thing to keep note of when we do go through everything. And so with that, of course, let's go into some actual coding, and I'll pass it on to Giovanni to begin the live coding section of it.
Hey everyone, I'm over here. I'll be switching the view here for a moment. Alrighty. So now you should see my screen here. Alright, so we're going to start with the code lab. So once you click on that link, it's the most recent set link in the chat. It will take you to here. There are different code labs here for different softwares and all that, but we're going to do the Good for Beginners section, write your own first Flutter app part 1. Right, so this first one right here. So once you enter this, to click on here, it will take you here. So this is the code that we'll be using. As you can see, all the steps are laid out here, steps 1 through 7. How it's going to work is that I'll do a few steps, then someone else will take over, and someone else will take over until the end of this code lab. All right, so this is a follow along, so make sure you have yours with you, because we're going to rely on this for the entire live stream. All right, so at the beginning, it tells you an introduction of what we're going to do. Right, so Flutter is Google's UI toolkit for building apps, and you'll learn how to build a Flutter app, the structure of it. You'll learn about packages, what are they. You'll learn about this new feature called the hot reload, which is new to Flutter, and also what are widgets as well, both stateful and stateless. And lastly, in the bottom, you have an example, a GIF here showing what the app is, what you'll be building here. So essentially, we're building a random name generator. And the theme is for a startup company. So these are all names for a startup company. And it's an infinite list. So the more you scroll, the more you get. And we're going to start with this first. But then in the next workshop, we're going to build off of this in a part 2. And we'll be adding Firebase. All right, so that's step 1. We're going to go on to step 2 here. So we're not going to cover the specifics of all of this here. But this step 2 is about what you need to get started. You would need the Flutter SDK, which you have to download. You would also need an editor of some kind. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, but you can use other ones. And then to actually run the code and see it on your display, you'll either need, if you have a Mac, Xcode, because you need the iOS emulator, or you can also get Android Studio for both Mac and Windows, so you can run it on an Android emulator, so an Android phone. Alternatively, you can also use a browser. You can download Chrome, and Chrome can also run this as well. Right. And the instructions for how to download this, how to use them, will be in the description of this video. Right. So if it's not there, we'll edit it later on. But yeah, so assuming you have some of this already, we're going to move on to step 3 here. All right, so step 3, I'm going to move this to the side. I'm going to minimize this here. So on the left here, I have two applications here that I've already downloaded. Have Android Studio. I'm going to use Android Studio, just the emulator, but I'm showing you that I've downloaded it. I'm also going to use Visual Studio Code, which is shown here. We'll be using this for the entire live stream. And one thing we got to do now, so it's more organized, is we're going to make a folder here. So I'm going to new. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Flutter Code Lab Part 1. All right, so now it's in my desktop here. And we're going to need this later on to put our Flutter project and our Flutter app files in it. All right, so we'll open up Visual Studio Code. I already have it launched, so I'm gonna click on here. All right, so Visual Studio Code is an editor. You can write code in here. And the cool thing about this particular one is you gotta write with other languages too, not just Dart. If you haven't used this, a quick brief overview of what you're seeing here is we can split this view into panels here. All right. So top here you have your menus, your submenus, right? File, edit. Should be pretty familiar with other applications you've used. This grayish panel over here is called the sidebar. Here we'll see your folder structure and your file structure once we pick a folder. And then over here, this area is called the activity bar. There's extra features of VS Code. The ones we're going to focus on for this code lab is just the first one here called Explorer, and also the second and last one called Extensions. And so once you have this open up, I'm going to go to Extensions real quick, and we need to download a few things. So make sure you look up, I'm going to look up Dart, because we need Dart. Dart is a programming language that we'll use to build our app. And so it should be the first one. You want to click on that, and you want to install it. I already have it installed, so it just gives me the option to uninstall. But for you, you have to install it, and it will do it automatically. And a loading bar will show up down here. But once that's installed, you also got installed Flutter. So let's type in Flutter. It should be like the first one here, right? I already have it installed, so it only gives an option to uninstall. But for you, you have to install it yourself. And one other thing that I'm using is called, I think, Bracket Colorizer. Yeah, Bracket Pair Colorizer. So this first one here. I'm using number 2. So I already have installed. Basically, it color codes your brackets, as you see here. See the purple? Otherwise, it would just be grayed out. So this would be useful, like if you hover your mouse over here, it'll tell you what's inside a curly brace. And I'll show that off later on. So I'm using this. So those are the 3 extensions I'm going to use. And extensions are like little add-ons to make your experience better on. Although I think you will need Dart and Flutter to continue.
So let's stop here and give them a moment if they need to install.
All right, guys. So yeah, once you click install, loading bar will show up and it'll just load for you. And that's pretty much it. It should just configure itself. No other settings you have to change or manage. All right, so assuming once you've done that, we're gonna go back to the Explorer option here. And this is still here, but I can exit out over here. These are called tabs, like in a browser, right? You can have multiple tabs, multiple files open, but I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna click on the X here. All right, so now we have this blank space here. All right, so now we gotta start a project. To start a project, you gotta go to View over here, go to Command Palette. So for me, it shows up already, but you gotta type in Flutter new application, because we're making a new application, then project. So for me, it shows up. So I'm gonna click on that. So it's gonna ask me to find a folder to place it in. And remember that folder we made earlier? It's in desktop, so I'm gonna go there. So I called it Flutter Code Lab Part 1. There's nothing in here. I'm gonna select this folder. It's gonna ask me to give a name for this project. I'm just gonna leave it default, Flutter application _1, enter. So now it's gonna make a couple of files. Here's that loading screen I was telling you about, loading bar here. Okay, so a couple things just happened. Yeah, a bunch of new folders over here in our sidebar, and all this code is in front of us. Exit out of this. So the purposes of this code lab, most of these folders here you could ignore, and we're not gonna talk much about it because it's not important for this code lab. But the one you'll be spending most of your time in is in the lib folder here, the library folder, specifically in this file called main.dart. If it has the .dart extension, that's a programming file using Dart, using the Dart language. All right. And another file you'll be using as well is this one down here, pubspec.yaml. Right, and we'll talk more about this later on. So we will use this once in our code lab. So back to main.dart. There's already an application here as an example, but we're going to delete all this. I'm going to highlight all of it. Just going to delete it. I'm going to save all of this. I'm going to go to File, Save All, or just Save. That saves it. There's an error here, but that's because we deleted a bunch of stuff, but we'll get rid of that error going onwards. All right, so now we move all this code. We're going to write in some code. So this is where we need the code lab on our side. So on step 3, so we're creating a starting Flutter app. We're going to ignore this portion here. This is only if you have Android Studio. You could use Android Studio as your editor, but we're not doing that. So we're going to ignore this. And you basically have to add all of this code into here. Now you can just copy and paste it, but I'm going to just type it line by line here. So we're going to do import this first portion here. I want to import a package. Now when you think of the word import, you're thinking like bringing something in, right, from outside. So when I'm importing this, I'm importing a file called, oops, material. Cool. So this file here, material.dart, has some functions, has some widgets in there that I need to build this app, that we will need to finish this code app. And that's why we have it here. And a package is like a bundle of code that someone else has written for us that we can use. And it's like a shortcut we can use. It saves a lot of time. And so...
Giovanni, can you zoom in on your
code?
All
right, sorry about that, guys. Let me zoom in. Control. So for me to zoom in, it's Control equal. So you can try that as well if you want to zoom in too. So let me zoom in one more time. Now I'm going to click on this Explorer to get rid of this submenu here, the sidebar. So that should be a bit better. Let's see. I think I'll leave it right here. If it's still not clear, let me know, guys, so I can make it bigger. All right. So I'm going to do Control S here to save my work. And now I'm going to write this next portion here. We do void main run app my app. There's going to be some errors because we're writing this line by line. But the idea is we're going to explain what's going on here bit by bit. So this portion here, every programming language starts with like a function. In Dart, it starts with main in particular. So we need to have this here. From main, this is where the programming language is going to start, where our app is going to start. And we're going to run a particular function called runApp. And runApp needs something given to it. And it needs a widget. Right? And we'll explain that later on more as we go on. But the widget we're going to pass in is called myApp. MyApp is basically this application we're making. And we're going to define it later on. It's defined here. Right? So we're saying, hey, I want to run an app. The app I'm running is called myApp, which is this here. And all this other code here is basically describing what it looks like. Right? So I continue onwards. I'm not gonna define this widget here. It's called a widget. To make it, I gotta do this class extend stateless. Cool. And then I need to have at override here. The widget. So yeah, right now I'm just like following the code lab bit by bit. Oh, the R. All right, just explain what's going on here. So my app is a widget. I'm creating it right here, and you create it, you have this like format. You're basically going to reuse over and over again. You're going to see this often a lot. And inside you have this little thing here called override An override is basically like, technically you don't, like the wrap will still work if you don't have it, but it's good to have it on there as it indicates that you're changing something. And the thing that we're changing is this build method here, right? So build is gonna create something. This is actually gonna create the look of it. And inside of build, we're gonna put in all of our features of our apps, all the little components of our apps, all the sub widgets, right? And so to do that, we need to have this code here. We need to have build context here and context. This is just repeated. Whenever you're making a widget, you're gonna have this over and over again, right? And then inside, we're gonna put in all of the pieces here. So we're gonna return material app here. This one. Right. Then inside of here, I'll press enter. So I'm returning material app. Material app is, again, it's kind of like a package, like a bundle of widgets to make an app, right? And here we have options like title and home as shown here, right? So we're gonna put in title. And we're put in welcome to Flutter. Actually, a single space. Okay, another thing we're gonna add as well is the home. And in home, we're gonna have scaffold. Oh, need to fix that. Oh, I was supposed to say a semicolon there. Yeah. Cool, cool. All right, so basically we're returning a material app. Material app is the app here. Inside of material app, we have a title. We also have a home portion. The home portion is basically this little block, this little section here, from corner to corner, right? And we can put in stuff in there. We can put in a block of text, but we're going to put in there something called a scaffold. And scaffold is also a widget, and it has a bunch of other widgets inside of it that you can use. And using scaffold, we can like create a skeleton of what our app should look like. And actually, one moment, I'm gonna do something real quick. Alrighty then, so in scaffold, I'm gonna add in a few things here. So I wanna have, so this here we have a little app bar section here. So here it says welcome Flutter, it's an app bar. It's called an app bar right here, this little light bluish area. So I'm gonna do app bar. Then we're gonna do app bar widget. Right. Then I'm gonna do enter. So in this app bar, I can place stuff in here. See like little color, the purple going around. So in app bar widget, which is this little section here, I can put stuff in there. I want to put in this text here. So to do that, I gotta put in title, constant text. Title. I want a title. It's gonna be a constant title, which meaning it's not gonna change. Text. It's gonna be a string, so I want welcome to Flutter. That's what I want to say. Basically copying this right here. And comma here. Right, so that's gonna go in our app bar. It's gonna show up there. Okay, so after this, in our scaffold, we also have a body section. So after this, come here and put enter. I'm gonna do body. Body. So let me backspace here. So I want a body, and the body is this section, this white space under the app bar. Little white space here. And again, I can add anything I want there. I can add text and more things, but in this case, we're gonna have single text in the center. So we're gonna do constant because it's not changing. Center because we want to center it in the screen. We do enter. We do the word child. The reason I do child is because we can have multiple things in the center, but so in each thing you want in the center is child. So we're gonna do child. And then const again. Const means it's not going to change. Then we do that text widget again. And in here, we're going to put hello world. Oops. Cool. Awesome. So, all right. So once again, we have our scaffold. In our scaffold, we have put in an app bar, which is this section here, this blue part. We give it a title text. So its title is Welcome to Flutter. Underneath that, we have a body section. In that body section, this white section, we have a text widget, which is going to contain hello world, which is this portion here. And whenever you do control save or save this file, it will just it'll reformat the code for you. Okay, so now I'm going to try running this. So to run this, I'm going to go down here to make sure I have my emulator selected. So when I click down here, it says Chrome. I want to make sure I have my emulator selected. So I set this up beforehand. Click on that. So this is going to run my emulator. Here's my emulator. It's basically a phone. All right, so we go home. All right, so to run this, we're going to go to run, then run without debugging here. So if you're running this for the first time, it's going to might take some time. So it might be stuck here for a few moments for it to load. And the cool thing about this is that when you have an emulator, it's literally like an actual phone. And you can have all your apps here and all your like test programs here. So it's like executing all these files. And when it's finished, we should see some text here. Okay, so we see something here. All right, there it is. So see, I've welcome to Flutter. This text right here. We have this hello world, right? We go to change this to, hello YouTube. And the good thing about Flutter is hot reload. Over here in VS Code, in this top section here, top right, I have the screen button here. I do, actually this lightning bolt, hot reload, if I click on that. Oh, I click save first. So first, save your file. For me, it's Control S. So when I do Control S, it's going to reload the whole program. And in that process, it will do a hot reload. And hot reload is basically, it'll quickly change the code and run it. So you can change the code and run it at this, and like right afterwards. So it's really fast, right? I can quickly change this to some other thing. So text, for example, then Control S or save right here. And it changes it immediately, right? So that's the cool thing about hot reload. And yeah, that's basically it for step 1 so far. It's getting this app to show up, this hello world to show up in the middle of the screen. And just to do a recap of what we just done here, to go into more detail about widgets and import and packages, I'll pass it on to Aaron here. So I'm gonna stop presenting and Aaron will take over from here. So I'll transfer you guys over.
All right, thanks Giovanni for the helpful starting point, and I hope everyone was able to understand how to get your app started. So for now, I'll be explaining a couple of key terms to note down, both specific to Flutter and what might be shared between Flutter and Java. If you've taken CSCI 145 at Mount you're in good shape because Flutter shares a lot of the same characteristics as Java. So to start off, if you weren't really clear as to what a widget was, widgets are specific to Flutter and are what you use to build your Flutter UI or user interface out of. By building a widget, you're building and defining what the user's view should look like when they open your app. A widget can have 2 states or settings, stateful and stateless. The main difference between the two states is that one is changeable and the other isn't later. And so for importing a class or package is the same thing as the #include in C++. A package is a group of classes that are related to each other, either in usage or in purpose. And so when you import or include a class or package, you can use the public variables and methods of the class. and the protected variables of the method and class of the class if the class is part of the same package. You cannot use any of the private methods or variables when you import or include, however. In both Java and Flutter, the @override tag is telling the compiler that you're redefining a method, or what would be called a function in C++, for a superclass in a subclass. I'll touch on what a superclass or subclass means in the next slide, but the general definition is redefining an already defined method somewhere else. Overriding a method in a subclass will have the same name, same parameters, and same return type as a method in the superclass. In Flutter and in Java, there are usually already methods defined in the language package, the ones that you don't have to explicitly import or include, that when you do use the method for your own class, you must override the method to fit the needs of your specific class. For example, if you've ever seen the toString method in Java, or the method that should return the class's objects and definitions in a string form, you usually have to override it to actually return those things. When you do have to import a class to override a superclass's method, you should look at the Flutter documentation, which will usually provide the appropriate method header, the top of the method definition, that you need to successfully override the method. The same goes for Java. You should look at Oracle's documentation for method headers. And I'll pause a little bit for questions. All right, so as I mentioned in the last slide about superclasses and subclasses, a superclass is a class that the child or subclass should inherit from. This is the same concept as base and derived classes in C++. Visibility modifiers, such as public, protected, and private, determines what can be inherited in the subclass. In this example of an inheritance hierarchy, we have three classes: vehicle, airplane, and sonic jet. Vehicle is a superclass of airplane and sonic jet, which means airplane and sonic jet can use the move method since it is public and naturally all vehicles should be able to move. Airplane is a subclass of vehicle and superclass of sonic jet. We see that the method fly is public in the airplane class. Not all vehicles can fly, so vehicle cannot use the fly method as a subclass is defined separately from the superclass. Note that you can go up a hierarchy. For example, airplane can use the move method since it's public, but you cannot go down, as in vehicle cannot use the fly method. Lastly, sonic jet is a subclass of airplane. We see that the fly method is also defined here, overriding the airplane's fly method. This is because sonic jet's fly method may have a different, more specific capability than an airplane's fly method. Again, a typical airplane cannot break sound barrier, as in the method in sonic jet, so it cannot use the sonic jet's method. Notice how sonic jet is an airplane, and an airplane is a vehicle. A vehicle is not necessarily an airplane, and an airplane is not necessarily a sonic jet. This reiterates how you can go up in an inheritance tree, but not down. I'll pause a little bit for questions. Alright, so for lambda expressions, they're pretty similar in Flutter and Java. They basically do the same thing, but with Flutter you have a equal sign and arrow, whereas for Java you just have the dash and arrow. Lambda expressions are similar to methods, but they do not need a name and they can be implemented right in the body of a method. Flutter's lambda expressions are essentially the same as how they work from Java. Small functions where you don't need a return call. You can provide the parameters to be used in the method with an arrow and then the expression of what the method will do. In Flutter, you'll typically see the equals arrow sign, as I said, used as a starting point to run the main method, as shown below in the example. This line of code will run your main function and is the entry point to the whole file of your code. And typically, it's in the main.dart file, but you can also put this expression in any other file if it has a defined main method. As Giovanni mentioned before, the material app or material class is sort of like a bundle of widgets that you could use, and is a common Flutter class that lets you, the programmer, easily set up a user interface for an app. This class provides color, shapes, and the create state and create elements method that you could use for your program. The create state method is used to create a changeable state for the widget at a given location in the tree or the layout of the user interface. And create element is used to create a stateful element to manage a widget's location in the tree. You can think of this as an element inside a given state in the layout of your user interface. And so for more Java/Flutter syntax, if you've ever seen an abstract class in C++ or classes that contain virtual functions, which in Flutter or Java is pretty similar to an abstract method, but not the same. Using the keywords extend is how you intend to implement an abstract class. Abstract classes are defined as classes that have no method implementations or may have method implementations, but they can be overridden or have abstract methods that don't have anything in the body. But it's your job as the programmer to implement or define the abstract methods provided from the class by overriding these methods, as we defined before, or the code will not compile if you don't override them. For example, when you see the line, my app extends stateless widget, stateless widget is the abstract class that classes with the stateless widget need to implement and define according to the characteristics of your app. It's necessary to override the build method in the stateless widget class because stateless widget is an abstract class that contains the abstract method build. One thing to note is that abstract classes are useful for classes that share similar characteristics so that the programmer doesn't have to keep defining the same method over and over again. I'll pause here for some questions. And if there are no questions, I'll pass it back to Giovanni.
All right, so I'm back. All right, so we left off here in step 3, right? We ran the app, we see hello world. It's right here. But now we're gonna move on to step 4, using external packages. All right, so step 4, I'll put this aside. All right, so we're gonna use an external package. Like we said earlier, a package is like a bundle of code that someone else has written. It contains information, it contains functions, widgets. And what we're gonna use is called English_words, right? And English_words has basically thousands of words. And we're gonna use these words to make these random names. We're gonna combine one and the other together into pairs. And so to use this, we gotta do 2 things. One, we gotta go to our pubspec.yaml file. So I'm gonna click over here on this Explorer tab again to open up this sidebar, right? And we'll go down to pubspec.yaml. And to see more, I'm gonna click on this again to get rid of the sidebar. I'm gonna go down, and the location where we need to add this section of code right here is in line, for me, line 26, right here, under dependencies, right? So, actually it's also written as well under cappuccino. As long as it's right here, it's fine. But we'll follow the code lab actually to be more consistent. So, under cappuccino icons, line 31, I'm gonna add in this line here. So, English underscore words, and then case caret 4.0. Okay, making sure it's spelled right. Cool. So now I'm gonna do Control S. And you see down here it's grabbing that package. It's gonna download it. Right, that's it from this file. That's it from here. So we're gonna go back to the Explorer. Also, one more thing to know is it has to be on the same indentation as Cupertino. It will not work if it's like one in. Gotta make sure it's like the same here. All right, so I'm gonna click on my Explorer tab. I'm gonna click on main.dart. I'm gonna go back in there. I'm gonna click on Explorer again to get rid of this sidebar. All right, we're gonna skip this section here of this code lab. It's assuming we had Enter Studio as the editor, but we don't. So I'm gonna skip that. And now we're in this section here. So like we did with Material Lab, we need to import this, right? We got to import it into our main.dart file. So I'm go underneath it, import, so package, oops, English _ words. It's already there. Oops. I'm gonna select this. All right, there it is. So now I'm gonna do Control S to save this. All right. It should be the same. Cool. So once again, we just imported a new file and we're gonna be able to use all the information in this English words. We'll be able to use all the words in there and also some other methods from this package, right? So it shortens the work for us. All right, so the next portion is this right here. And we're basically doing three things actually. We're adding this here, this line of code here. We're modifying our body of our scaffold here. So first off, we're adding a new variable under widget build. So right here, it means line 8. I'll add some more spaces to make it more clear. So we're in a new variable, final word pair. Word pair, capital P. That's going to be equal to capital W word pair dot random. And then we do a semicolon at the end. Oops. We do Control S. Right, so things not being used, but we'll use it in a bit. So this variable here, word pair, is going to contain this information here. In word pair, this widget here is from this package English words.dart, and it's basically going to give us a pair of random words combined together. And the dot random, it's going to randomize it every time. It's going to get a random one every time we run the app. And we'll see that happening in a bit. All right, so this is new. The next step is this line right here in the body of our scaffold. So this is scaffold right here, this yellow here. And we're modifying our body here, which means that in our app, we're modifying this white portion right here. All this white space, this body section here. Currently we have one thing in there. It's this text. In our case, it says hello text. And we're going to modify it so that instead of just displaying a constant phrase, it's going to be the variable word pair. So to do this, I got to do a few things. I got to get rid of the constant here because it's no longer constant. It's like changing. Then in the child, I'm getting rid of the constant as well. And I'm changing this text into word pair dot. So here I'm putting in the variable. So I'm going to do I see. Yeah. So word pair. So this is the variable we made earlier, which is up here. Right? The case function match. And we're going to do dot asPascal. So this is going to change. So word pair is going to give us a word, right? I go over here. An example is odd seal, right? And asPascal basically makes the first letter capitalized, and it also makes the first letter of the second word capitalized, right? So notice how the letter O of odd and letter S of seal are both capitalized. That's asPascalCase, right? And then that's pretty much it for this section. We can just Control S to save. And by saving it, it should have changed our app. Yeah, so you see here, bid glove, right? So our app just changed, and I can redo that by clicking on this hot reload. And every time I hot reload, it changes the word here. Now it's ill air, aid fat, and hot faith, right? So that's so every time we reload it, changes it, and it gets that word from that package which we added earlier called English words. All right, so that's it for this portion. Just getting the package to work and displaying a random pair every time. And just to recap and go into more detail of all this, I'm gonna pass it on to Nate. So Nate, you can take it off
there.
right now.
Yeah. Share. Let me do this. All right. Hey guys, is everything fine? Okay. Hey guys, my name is Nate, and let us recap a little bit of what we learned in step 3 and step 4. Giovanni mentioned about English words package and pubspec.yaml. So let's start with English words. English words is a Flutter package used for working with English words. The uses include to generate word combinations, count syllables, and it provides access to commonly used English words. So the next term may not be very familiar to you. It's called pubspec.yaml, and Giovanni mentioned about it. To simply put, pubspec.yaml manages the assets of your Flutter app. And what are assets, you might ask? Assets include the external packages like English words. It includes images that you import and also fonts. And to import it to our app, we append the English underscore words 4.0 to the dependency list in the pubspec.yaml file under the lib folder. And also, be mindful that we need to import the same English word package into main.dart because that is what's going to give access of our code to the English word package. So the syntax is as follows: import package colon English underscore words / English underscore words .dart, as you can see here. Next up, little recap about some terminologies. Final variables. What is final variables? For those of you who have programming experiences, specifically C++ programmers, you may be more used to the term const, which stands for constant. Yeah, a variable with the final keyword will be initialized at runtime and can only be assigned for a single time, meaning that the assigned value will be used throughout the runtime of the app. The next thing is asPascalCase, which Giovanni mentioned just before we move on to the recap section. asPascalCase is simply a naming convention where the first letter of each word is capitalized. Those of you with Java experiences may know camel case, where the first letter of the first word is not capitalized, but the following words first letter is capitalized, as you can see in the example. MasterCard has the M in lowercase and C in uppercase. Star Wars has the S in lowercase and the W in uppercase. PascalCase, on the other hand, has all the first letter of each word in capital. So MasterCard would have M as capital and C as capital. Star Wars would be S as capital and W as capital. Google Rocks would have G as capital and R as capital. That's a little about asPascalCase. We're going to move on to child property. In this series, we may not have touched on children property, but it's good that we consider the two of them. So what is a child property? Child property takes a single widget only. And as you can see in this example, it only takes the text widget, which holds the string Google. A children property, on the other hand, takes a list of widget. A list of widget in this example would be the two text widgets containing the string Google and DSC. And you guys might have inferred that children is the plural for child. So same analogy goes for the property in taking widgets. While child takes a single widget, children takes a list of widgets. Lastly, Giovanni mentioned about hot reload and hot restart. What are the two? The both are basically reloading features that Flutter added, and the difference is really subtle, not very subtle, kind of subtle, but the main difference is in the time it takes to reload the app. So hot reload takes only about 3 seconds to reload the app, to build UIs, to add new features, and to fix bugs. How does it do it? It does it by preserving the state of the app and only executing codes that involve widget rebuilding. Hot restart, on the other hand, may take several more seconds to reload the app because it destroys the preserved state and runs the complete program. So if hot restart takes a little longer to load, why should we use hot restart? Why don't we just use hot reload all the time? Great question. The simple answer to that is that in hot reload, it preserves the state of the app. So if you make modifications that affects the state of the app, you won't see any changes to the app because you will only keep loading the previous saved state. So when is hot restart necessary? It is necessary for modifications that affect the state of the application or the widget root. That's a little of the recap section. Oh, I am so sorry. Let us move on to step 5. Step 5 of the code lab. Now we're just about ready to add a stateful widget. Just quickly, before we code, let's assess the difference between a stateless and a stateful widget. So what is a stateless widget? A stateless widget is a widget whose state is immutable, meaning that its properties cannot be altered or changed once they are built. Thus, they are called final. Stateful widget, on the other hand, is a widget whose state can be altered during the lifetime of the widget. This means that the state of the app can change multiple times with the different sets of variables, inputs, and data. To implement a stateful widget, we need two classes, the stateful widget itself and the state object. The stateful widget acts as a template for the state object, and this template only acts as a configuration info and thus cannot change. 1 second. I'm so sorry for that. Yeah, the template serves only as a configuration info and this cannot change. That's why it's called immutable. Cannot change. The state object, on the other hand, uses that template to create child widgets, and it holds on to values which can change over time. And that is why it is called mutable. The state object keeps track of the data changes and pushes new code to our UI. This allows the hot reload feature from Flutter, which preserves the state of the app and only executing the code involved in widget rebuilding. That's a little about stateful and stateless widget. So you might ask, why do we need a stateful widget in our app? So let's consider an example. Let's say we want to create a button that would increment a variable called count by 1 every time we click it. In order for the app to properly display the UI, to display the incrementing counts in the UI, we would need a dynamically changing UI, and this is done by implementing stateful widget. Stateful widget allows the storing of new data and values throughout the runtime of the app. So in this particular example, the app that would increment the count by 1 would hold on to the assigned value, and then we'll keep on updating and pushing it to the UI every time we run it. Now that we just discussed some terminologies, we are ready to finally code. Let me change the...
And just before we hop into the coding section by Nate, I did want to mention that, yeah, like we did plan an hour this workshop. So for those of you that are joining us live and and want to stick around to the end, but you may have some stuff to do, there is still a bit more content that we're going to go through. However, of course, this is going to be recorded, and you can always watch it later time. However, you can also just stay and watch the rest of it if you want. But yeah, just letting you guys know. So yeah, this will be available later.
Thank you, Michael. So we just discussed some terminologies in this session, and we are ready to code it. So first things first, what we are going to do is create a boilerplate for the stateful widget. Boilerplate is simply a template for the stateful widget. And we do this by first clicking enter to create some space and typing stful, S-T-F-U-L. And you should see over here that there is pop-up suggestions. And we can just click enter to accept the suggestion. And you can see the template pops up for the stateful widget. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to name the widget random words. And we are going to change the state object into underscore random words state. Keep in mind that we need the underscore. It's important. Here we are also going to change it into an underscore random words state. CodeLab explains it a little bit that random words is the stateful widget and the state object is the random word state, as you can see there. So we have an accompanying class here. We are going to touch on that right now. We are going to name that second class underscore. Oh yeah, you might see these squiggly red lines, and that's because we have not defined this following class, which we're going to do right now. We're going to define it random underscore random words state, which extends a state object. We can write random words here. And as you can see, everything seems to be working well. Yeah, most of the app's logic resides here because it maintains the state for the random words. As you can see here, this specific part just means that the random words state will be preserved. And now we can change. The last couple things we're going to do is modify this line of code, which initially returns a container. We're going to delete it and change it into the final variable called word pair and set it and initialize it to word pair dot random method. There you go. Yeah, if you guys might be wondering, we're on this step right here. As you can see, it's new. And lastly, we're going to return a text widget which holds word pair dot asPascalCase. So what does this do? It returns a text widget that holds the final constant word pair and setting it using the naming convention of asPascalCase. As I have mentioned earlier, PascalCase is a naming convention where the first letter of each word is capitalized. Now we're just about done finishing up in step 5. The last couple of things we're going to do is we're going to delete the final word pair over here. You can simply just backspace it. And you might see the squiggly line here. And that's okay because we're going to redefine some things. So CodeLab says delete this and replace it with a child property that takes it and random words method. And as you can see, everything seems to be running well. Last thing is to hot reload the app. And hot reloading is this button right here, the yellow light, or Control F5. Let me pull out my emulator. So nothing seems to be changing, right? And it is meant to do so because, because we're just setting up for the last step, which will be bring about by Michael. Michael?
All right, cool. Let me share my screen. there we go. Should be good. All right, cool. Thanks, Nate. So now we're going to continue off from where Nate left off, which is now we have this app which gives us a random word pairing that we can use as a potential startup company name. But like Nate was saying, it's not that good because you have to constantly refresh if you want to get a new word pairing. Like we have dish blood here, and then we refresh, get Grand Tree. What if we just gave the user an entire just list of options that they can just keep scrolling? We can even make it infinite, where if they keep scrolling, we just load in new ones. And so that's what we want to accomplish in step 6 of the code labs, which is creating the infinite scroll list. So now starting off with adding a bit of code, the first thing that we're going to want to add now is going to be a word pair list or array, as indicated by our brackets here, which is going to hold all of our word pairings that we want to put on the app, and as well as a new font size, a new font style for our words that we display. Because of course, as of right here, the wording is a bit small. I'm not even sure how well you guys can see it on the stream right now, but we want to make it bigger because if this is going to be the only thing we're displaying, of course we want to increase the font size. And so right now we're going to add these variables to our random word state class. So if we find it over here, it's on line 35 for me, maybe a bit different for you. But so it's just going to be the first thing that we add. So I'm going to have final underscore suggestions. So this is just our pairing of, or our list of word suggestions or company name suggestions that we're going to have for this app. And then I'm going to make it an array of word pairs. And then I'm going to also add final underscore bigger font, which is going to hold a font style essentially of text style. And the font size that we're going to want to have it is at 18. So I believe this is at 18-point font. Whoops. 18-point font here. And so these are going to be essentially just our added variables here to this class, And this over here is just going to be our word pair list. And this over here is just going to be our font size. Cool. And so that's just the first section over here. And now continuing on, now when we actually do build this list here of word pairs, we want to actually display this. We need to display it somehow to the to our app. And so that's what this next section is going to go over. And it's going to be our build suggestions function, where we're essentially just how it's described. We're going to build the list of suggestions. And so we're going to add this in our underscore random word state class as its own method. So we can just continue on like somewhere over here underneath the build method. And so we can write this down. So we're going to have widget underscore build suggestions. And then inside of here, we're going to return the list view object build. And then inside of this, we're going to add some padding around each of our words, which essentially is, if you're familiar with CSS or any web dev stuff, it's just basically spacing around the words, so it's not tightly squeezed in one area, but there's some spacing around each of the words. And so the spacing that we want, it's going to be around all of the edges. And I believe the 16 is going to indicate that it's going to be it's either 16 pixels or 16 point. I'm pretty sure it's 16 pixels of padding across it. And then as we go through this, you'll see these big chunks of text over here. there's no need to worry about it because these are actually just comments indicated by the 2 forward slashes. So really, there's not too much code on this section over here. And for those of you going about this like at your own pace, or if you do review of this, it's definitely a good read to kind of see how they're describing everything. But of course, we're just giving you a brief overview of everything. And so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the item builder. The item builder parameter, which is essentially going to be what's building our word list within our app. And so how we want to build our word list and place down all of our words is we want to put a word, and underneath that we want to add a dividing line, and then put a word underneath that, and then a dividing line, and it's just going to be flipping back and forth of a word pair, then a line, word pair, and then a line, word pair, and a line, so that they're separated from each other. And so we can think of each of these putting these objects within our app as just even and odd lines. So every even line we're putting down a word pairing, and every odd line we're putting down a dividing line. It was just like a either like a gray or black line just goes across the screen. And so that's what we'll see here. So first, we're just going to create this this callback function, which is essentially going to be what's counting up our lines as we go down. And whoops, make sure that you need a capital B here. And so build context, and then underscore context, and then we need an integer I, which is going to be our increment for this. And so as we increment down, like we said before, every odd line that we count, we're going to add a dividing line, and every even line, we're going to add our word pair. So in order to do that, we would first just create this if statement. We're going to say if our index line that we're counting is odd, then what we're building, what we're returning in this sense, is just a dividing line, which is called divider here, which is just a black line going across. So I'll just indicate that here, black line going across screen. And then the next thing after this, because we're already returning from this function, we don't need to put like an else or anything after that, because this return is already indicating that this is ending the function. So we can just start off in writing the code for what happens if you're at an even number line, and this is going to be essentially print out the word pair. And again, in case you're not too familiar with programming, everything that's in green right here and followed by the 2 forward slashes, it's just a comment. So it's not really any code. It's not anything that's necessary, but it's just to provide extra explanation to what's going on within this code. And so next thing we're going to do after this is that, okay, we know we're at an even number. So we're going to say final int index is equal to I, and there's this weird operator called tilde divided by 2, which for those of you who are familiar with anything like integer division within programming languages, this is what this is. It's integer division. So if this was something like 3, instead of this outputting 1.5, it would only output 1 because it only cares about that first number. It doesn't care about anything after the decimal point. But of course, this is almost redundant in a sense, because we know that if we're at this point here, we're going to already have an even number, and every even number is divisible by 2. But it's just good to have. And so you'll notice also down here, if you're going through the code lab by yourself, or you do review over this in the future, that there is a bit of a bug, which it's treating this first forward slash and the second forward slash as a comment. And so everything after this is read as green as a comment. But realistically, there is some code here, which is right here. So that's what I'm going to be reading off of, and just everything followed by the / I'm almost like ignoring in this sense, or adding my own comments to this. So it's just a good thing to look out for if you're reviewing back over this by yourself. And so the next thing we're going to add is the if statement that's essentially going to look at our index value. So our index is basically like our count within our list of different word pairs, and we're going to check, okay, if we have this certain number of word pairs, which is indicated by this variable suggestions.length, the length or number of word pairs that we have, if our index is greater than or equal to that number, that means we've essentially reached the end of the list. And in order to create an infinite list, in this case, all we need to do is just add 10 more numbers to that list once we reach the end of it. And this is what's giving us our essentially infinite list, our, I guess, pseudo infinite list, like, if you will, where it's not truly infinite, but basically once you reach the end of it, it's just adding 10 more. It's adding 10 more, generating 10 more. And so this is going to be indicated by this function call. So we're going to add all, and we're going to generate word pairs dot take 10. So we're going to generate a list of word pairs, and we're going to take 10 of those word pairs, and we're going to add them on. So we're going to generate the word pairs. We're going to take 10 of those word pairs, and we're going to add them onto the list. And so that's going to essentially create our create an infinite list here. And then, so after that, that'll be the end of that if statement. And then the last thing we need to do, if we do add on more elements, or add on more word pairs to our list, is after we do that, we'll just return build row function call, and we're gonna return build row underscore suggestions at our specified index that we're at. So we're going to build the specific row that we're at using the word at that index or at that position within the list. And this is what's gonna actually print out the specific word that we want. And so you'll notice that we're gonna have this red underlined squiggly because we haven't actually created this function at all. We still need to create this function that's gonna actually build the row for us. And so with that ends that. Don't forget to add your semicolon at the end of this, because remember that this is just all indentation. So this is just like one return function. So this is the return statement, and then starts here, ends here, you need that ending semicolon. And so that's the end of that method. And so the next thing that we're going to do, like I mentioned before, is we're just going to add our underscore build row function that will build the row of whatever word pair that we pass to it. And so this is going to be within our same class. It's going to be within this underscore random word state class. It's just going to be a method inside of it. I'm just going to put it after our underscore build suggestions class. And then, so I'm going to say, we're going to pass the widget, and we already named this build row. And the parameters that are going to be accepted into this function is going to be a word pair object. Word pair. And so then in order to build our row, all we're going to do is we're going to return a list title. It's just going to be a title. It's part of some list, or formatted as a list. And then the title, the title we're going to give this is going to be the text of our word pair. Whoops. It's going to be the text as our word pair, and the text is going to be the pair that we have dot as Pascal case. And remember, as Nate mentioned before, when we specify that some text is being set to asPascalCase, we're just setting 2 words like hi and there. They get transformed into the capital H hi and the capital T there, something like that. So we get rid of that spacing in the middle, and then we capitalize each beginning letter. And so we're going to do our parent.asPascalCase. And then for the style for this word that we're printing out, that's going to be our 18-point style font that we specified way up here, right here. Our bigger fonts, how we just said it was a font size of 18. That's going to be right here. So style underscore bigger bigger font. So the style of this text that we're printing out is just going to be that 18-point font that we have. And then with that's our build row method. So this will essentially build our row. It looks like I may have forgotten something there. Title. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, so this will build the word pair to the app that we have.
Michael, I believe it's list tile, not title.
Ah, whoops. You're right. Okay, I misread that. Thank you. Okay, cool. That's why I was like that. Thanks for the correction. All right, and then yeah, so with that we have a list tile, and then passing in the text as asPascalCase and with our 8-point font size. I guess it'll just be good to specify that in case anybody's reading through the code. It's just going to be our 18-point font size. And then the final thing, or not the final thing yet, but right now so far we've just been creating methods to build this. Yes, to build this, but we're not actually using it yet. But before we do that, we're going to need to do one more thing, which is going to be in our in our build method or build function within our underscore random word state class. We're just going to instead of actually just creating a single word, because remember this is just creating a single word pair, and then it's just returning that text as asPascalCase, and then it just returns as asPascalCase, or I guess just use the pascalCase to describe pascalCase. We don't want to do that anymore. Now we want to use a little bit of what we've already built, which creates our infinite words of word list and then prints all that out within our build function here. And so in that case, I'm going to delete these 2 lines, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to return a scaffold object, which then is going to have our app bar as seen before, which is going to have the app bar, which is the top section, I believe, from what Giovanni was showing us earlier. And for the top section of our app, we're just going to want to have our title, which is going to be some text, and this text is going to be the name of our app, which is essentially what it's doing, which is going to be a startup name generator. But this can really be anything you want. So you can make it like my first Flutter app or something like that. And actually, but yeah, and this will be what's displayed on the top of your app. But for now just following with Collabs, and because we're actually creating this startup name generator, that's going to be the title that we have. And then the last thing that we want to do is then once we create this app bar, then we want to specify what's going to be in the body of our app, which is everything underneath this, like the main chunk, I guess the body of the app, if you will. And that's going to be everything that gets built when we call our build suggestions method. Whoops. Build suggestions method. So whatever's in the body is whatever's returned when we call this function, which is everything in here, which is what we did when we were creating our infinite word list and printed it out. So now we've actually fully built our underscore random word state so that it outputs our infinite word list to our app. And now the final thing that we're going to need to do, which is the final step in part 1, which is then we need to actually use this when we run our build method in our actual myapp class. And so now, in order to do that, what we're gonna do is I believe yeah. So we're gonna essentially just get rid of everything that's inside of here, because now we want to structure this in a way that uses everything we've built, all like our random words class and random word state class as well. So now what we're going to do is we're still going to return our material app from before, so that doesn't change. And the title of our app is going to be set up to our same title that we have, startup name generator. But now the difference is that when we do build this, we want to call on our random words class that we have, or just create this random words object essentially, which is going to build our infinite word list that we do have, because our home is calling or is building this random words object, which is here, which then creates this random word state, which calls on that random word state object, which we know then creates our whole infinite list and stuff like that. So you can kind of see how our code is connecting within everything that we're doing. And so with that should be the end of this. So if I do now refresh this, or I should save this first. If you don't notice anything, make sure you do save everything, because then it won't look at your saves at your most recent version of the code. It'll look at your most recent saved version, and you'll see like a little white dot if you haven't saved them at all. And so now what we have our name up here, our app bar, startup name generator, and now we have our infinite list. So as I actually scroll through all these names, you'll see that it's actually infinite. I can just keep scrolling, and once I reach the end, you'll see that it kind of lags a bit, and that's just essentially it building more words to it. And so yeah, but yeah, so now with that, we've created our infinite word list. And so you can look at this and then look at potential startup company names. Like Pointbox actually seems pretty cool. And yeah, Wishfee, Netchip, DeskTube. And yeah, with that pretty much ends part 1. And so the next part, or part 7 from this, is just describing the next steps. And of course, Codelabs is a great tool for learning. We're only just going over part 1, but of course we're going to have a second part for this workshop, which is going to maybe deviate a little bit from Codelabs, and we're going to work with Firebase. But if you guys want to continue this on your own, we do have the link for you. I believe we did put it in the chat and as well as in the description. If not, that we'll be sure to add that in. and you guys can continue on your own on the second parts and on other tutorials on Code Labs. But yeah, that's pretty much it for part 1 though. So good job, guys.
Okay, so now I will be, oops, that is not what I wanted to do. I will cover what is next for our club. So a few of our upcoming workshops. On May 22nd, we will have our LinkedIn workshop. We've been telling you guys to keep an eye out for our LinkedIn workshop, and we're finally gonna have it. So in this workshop, you can create your LinkedIn account with us, or if you already have an existing one, you can revise it. And that'll help you market yourself to recruiters. Our workshop after that is on May 29, and that is the part 2 to this series, our Flutter and Firebase series, and that'll cover Firebase, and we will cover how to integrate Firebase with what we created today on Flutter. So with that, we also have officer applications open right now. We are still looking for applicants. So if you're interested for being a part of the DSC officer team in fall 2021 to 2022, go ahead and scan this and fill out the application. Also, stay connected with us if you're looking for updates, what we're doing. Our main method of communication is through Discord, but we also have other social medias and other links that are available if you scan this Linktree QR code. And then lastly, we also always want your feedback to let us know how we did this time. And all of these links that I just mentioned will also be available in the video description. That wraps it up. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thanks everyone.
See y'all next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.